Hey y'all, Data Guy here. And today I'll be walking through all of the new features that were introduced in Airflow 2.6 that are worth talking about. So my friend and coworker Viraj put this blog post together to help consolidate it all. And so I'm going to kind of walk through and explain why each of these features are really so valuable. So first feature is consolidated trigger logs in the UI. So with deferrable tasks in Airflow 2.2, you had a new component introduced called the trigger. And so what the trigger essentially did was replace the need to have a worker slot taken up by a sensor to wait for a state change. Now you have the trigger, which is dedicated to detecting state changes and allows you to have deferrable tasks that wait for those state changes to occur, and then the trigger will take that state change and use it to say, hey, go start running this task. So this enables things like data-aware scheduling, where instead of needing to use a sensor or time-based scheduling, you can just wait for a data set to arrive and then trigger downstream tasks when that arrives. So by bringing the trigger logs into the UI, you now have a much better picture in your logs of what's happening not only with the scheduler, but also with the trigger, so that if you're using a lot of data aware scheduling, you have all the information needed to debug when and if something goes wrong. And so the next feature is notifiers. And notifiers are a really great way to add notifications across all of your DAGs and extend your notification logic however you want. So historically, you've had to write callback functions for every individual DAG. You can obviously copy and paste such callback functions, but there was no real pre-built integration. So when you were setting up those callback functions, you would have to, set up that integration to Slack, email, Teams, whatever, and couldn't really be intuitively used within the scope of that callback. So with notifiers, now you have a dedicated notification object for Airflow. So this is designed so that it's an extensible layer for adding notifications to any DAG you'd like. So what this kind of looks like in practice is you'll define a notifier class that will determine the logic for what's going to happen when a failure occurs or a success occurs. And so here within this really simple notifier, we're just taking a message and then sending it, either using email, Slack, whatever, to just send, hey, this task instance has failed, or if we wanted to set up a success, we could also set up a success. Now, once you define your base logic, you can then reuse this in every DAG. So instead of me needing to write this callback function in my DAG code, I can just reference it like so with my notifier, message success, message failure. Um, and you can extend this even more. You can predefine, all your connections to Slack, email, so that every time you call this notifier, it can just leverage those existing connections. You don't have to rebuild it for every DAG. So really excited what people do with this, and how it makes notifications in Airflow just much, much simpler. The next feature is no more tasks stuck in queue. So been waiting for this day ever since I started using Airflow, where almost everyone has run into that situation where, why do I have these tasks stuck in queued? I can't do anything about it. You have to go in, manually debug it. There's not really a lot of clear errors because it never actually fails. It's just stuck in queued. Now we have a new parameter called task queued timeout that can be used regardless across executor environment that will fail a task if it stays in a queued state longer than a predetermined amount of time. So now, instead of you needing to go in, manually mark them as fail or use some other mechanism, you can just have a predefined parameter that says, hey, if a task is stuck in queue longer than, let's say, 30 seconds, kill it. And you can also bake in additional logic to retry and failure logic to kick in because of this as well. So really, really big bugaboo of mine, and most people, that was eliminated here. So excited to see, this reduce a lot of headache for a lot of people. Now we're taking the grid view to the next level as well. So what we're doing here is taking that grid view that everyone knows and loves and combining it with the DAG graph. So now when you go to the grid view, you will also see the graph of your DAG, giving you a holistic view of not only your historical DAG run information, but also the logic in between tasks, all within one view. You also have additional logic to filter for certain tasks to see all tasks upstream or downstream of a certain task. So if you want to isolate a certain flow of a really large DAG, you now have the tools to do so. And that's not all. We also have the continuous timetable, which is essentially just a way to set your schedule to be always. So now every time a DAG finishes running, the continuous timetable can allow you to just trigger another DAG run. So instead of needing to have a dedicated task at the end of your DAG to kick off another DAG run after that current one is completed, now it can just do that automatically just by defining the schedule as continuous. Don't do data streaming with it because it's still not best practices, but you can get pretty close. You also have now a UI for triggering based on DAG level params. So when you're triggering a DAG, you can pass it a certain amount of params. CLI commands for testing connections, getting DAG details, as well as performance improvements made by preloading imports. So a lot of really great features here. And if you're looking for an easy way to upgrade to Airflow 2.6, come talk to us at Astro. So have a good one. I hope you learned something, and goodbye.